And we are back with the amazing Holly Allaway, and we are talking about marketing today. Why marketing? What made you get into marketing? You know, earlier on you were talking about being a goth and an emo and black hair and studs. What step did you take from that moment to get into marketing?
Well, you mentioned before I am now living in Japan. So coming to Japan, I was an English teacher, like a lot of people are when they come to a non-English speaking country. So I became an English teacher. But then obviously when COVID hit, my job almost became obsolete. And I was actually one of the lucky ones that was full-time employed, whereas a lot of my friends who also live in Japan, they were part-time. So I was still getting a salary, I was still, working, but not teaching at that time. So they thought, what can we do with this girl? So they lumped me with the recruiters because all of a sudden now they've got a whole different strategy that they have to do, which is instead of employing people from overseas, now that with the borders closed and people can't fly in, now we've got to suddenly recruit in Japan. So there was a whole marketing strategy that we had to create around recruitment, and recruiters now with their digital marketing is what I do now because of that experience. So, it was a huge learning curve for a good 2 years, but it ultimately led me to quit that full-time job and then start my business within the digital marketing, working with HR and recruitment professionals. So, I'm both grateful for the experience, but also it made me realize that, no job is going to be 100% there for you depending on the situation that you're in. So that forced me to think, well, I've got to make my own stability, I've got to make my own business. And marketing, we'll get onto this later, I'm sure, but it's the very core of any business. You can't do your business unless you have a good marketing strategy. You don't know how to present your offer, you don't know how to talk to the right people or sell to the right people, and how you present yourself as a business owner. It's everything to do with the business. So I thought marketing is, I guess, the smartest choice I could make.
Yeah, it's always going to be around. It's needed. It's everywhere. People don't
Yeah.
see it, but once you start in businesses, and especially obviously yourself in marketing, you see it bloody everywhere, and it's sometimes it's so painful because you're kind of like you're just marketing to me, and I'm not going to fall for it. I'm not going to fall for it, but you do. And I want to rewind a little bit. And so, before you went to Japan, what were you doing before you went to Japan?
So I was a university student in England. I'm born and raised in England, born and raised in Leicester, and then moved to Lincoln to do a psychology degree. And I actually never went to my graduation because I was shipped off to Japan before I could even get to my graduation. So I do have a certification. I have got a degree, but I just never went to my graduation because I thought, sod it, I need to get out. I need to start my new life as soon as possible. So yeah, actually, my first full-time job was in Japan. I did part-time work in cinemas. That's also, I think, where my inspiration for my music taste came from as well. Classic cinematic music and soundtracks. That's also very much my music taste. But yeah, Japan was and has been my home now for 8 years. So I'm 29 now, 30 in the next few months. So it's been a huge part of my life. Yeah.
And I've got to touch on the Japan thing. You've obviously been there for 8 years now, so you're kind of well and truly got your feet under the table. What are the three major differences being there for 8 years? If you were talking to someone who'd never been to Japan before, me, I've never been to Japan. What are the three major differences you're going to see compared to being from the UK or Australia, which are very similar countries? What's the three things you thought, oh my God, that's a bit different?
You know what? How clean Japan is.
Mm-hmm.
For being, I think Japan is 1.5 times bigger than the UK, which isn't saying much to be fair. We're such a tiny bloody island.
Yeah.
But the just the atmosphere and the community spirit in Japan to keep their country safe and clean is so much different than you would find in England. Whereas, you go to a football match, for instance, in the UK, and people just leave their litter, leave their trash everywhere. They don't care about it. They've got cleaners for a reason. That's kind of the mental attitude that we have back in England. Whereas if you go to like a baseball game or any kind of sporting event in Japan, people pick up after themselves. And I think it was a soccer match or a football match somewhere, I think in Italy or somewhere like that, where Japan was playing. where the Japanese spectators were picking up after themselves, and it created this whole ripple effect that even the other spectators that weren't Japanese, they were picking up after themselves. So it kind of, created this whole community effect, and that's what you have here in Japan. So cleanliness is one of them. Second, I would say the food and the presentation around food. Whereas when I grew up, my dad was like, well, it's all going to get churned up in your stomach anyway. Just put it on your dish and put it in your bowl kind of thing. Whereas here, even my husband, who doesn't normally cook, he is a very good cook, but he doesn't normally cook. The way he presents it, he goes, well, you taste with your eyes, you've got to present it very well. So they have a meticulous way of presenting themselves, presenting their food, presenting anything that they do. Whereas, in England, make, do, and mend, that's our mentality. So it's been a bit of a learning curve to kind of change that about myself. The third one, I would say the third one is, it's tricky because I think the UK and Japanese people are very similar. We've got very similar humor, very similar ways of, it's called honmai and tatemae, where you say, oh, it's nice to see you, Bobby, hi. And then behind the back, they go, what a bitch. Hate. So we're very similar in that aspect. If I was going to pull one out, I would say how kind people are. Yeah, I think they're very kind in Japan. Yeah, very foreigner friendly as well. Very foreigner friendly.
And what's your next 4 tracks?
So my next 4 tracks, we've got a bit of Madonna, Material Girl. We've got Michael Jackson, The Way You Make Me Feel. Bit of Foo Fighters, Everlong. And I saw them before I came to Japan back in 2014, 2015. They were amazing. And the Goo Goo Dolls, Iris. And this would be my track when I was getting married. If I was going to walk down the aisle, got married in January, never had a wedding. So that song holds a place in my heart.
So if you listen to this and you hear that track, just to close your eyes, imagine Holly walking down an aisle to a future husband who is a current husband. You get what I mean, anyway. Yeah, I'm going to stop waffling on. We're going to let the music do the talking, and we'll be back talking about marketing with Holly very soon.